Starting today, I'm living with my eldest son, his wife, and our grandchildren. We don't need strangers anymore. That's what we decided in a family meeting. From the tone of Matthew's voice, it didn't seem like he was joking. I don't know who you are, but old lady, get out of the house. We're going to work together as a family from now on, so please leave early. There's no room for you anyway. My eldest son, James, and his wife, Mary, said this while making shooing gestures as if mocking me. My anger went beyond my limits. Yet, I calmed down and laughed in front of the three of them. It's ridiculous to stand on the same stage with such people and get angry over provocations. After all, I'm the one paying $3,300 for living expenses, and they forget that and decide to kick me out. What are they planning to do from now on? Got it. I'll divorce you as well. I'll leave as you said. My words made the three of them smirk in a disgusting manner. I then turned around and left the living room, locking myself in my room. Your belongings are trash. Take everything with you, Matthew shouted from the living room. I silently began packing my things without responding. My name is Elizabeth. I am currently 65 years old. I was married to Matthew and had a part-time job, but now I work from home alongside household chores. I met Matthew when he approached me on the street. I was a college student at the time. He fell in love with me at first sight and approached me. Despite being a working adult, 7 years older than me, I had no experience with men and kept my distance from Matthew, full of caution. But Matthew didn't give up and kept talking to me whenever we met. It was often just greetings, but we would chat whenever there was time. Despite my reluctance, I listened, and eventually, he realized I wasn't interested and said to me, I didn't want to bother you. I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. That made me realize Matthew's sincerity, and I decided to face him. Gradually, I started to be attracted to Matthew as well. After I graduated from college, we got married and were blessed with a daughter, Lisa, and a son, James. Matthew, who loved children, was cooperative in raising our 2 kids, and we lived happily as a family. However, that happiness did not last long. When James entered middle school, I started working part-time again, and it was then I heard something unbelievable. It was a colleague of mine, Emily, who was a year older than me, who told me. We were close in age and we both had children. I felt a kinship and liked her straightforward, caring personality. One day, as we left work at the same time, she mentioned, by the way, I was once approached by a guy at this station. It was the same station where I met Matthew. I thought it was a curious coincidence and listened as Emily continued. A friend of mine was also approached by the same guy. It became a topic among us, and after observing for a while, it turns out he was hitting on various girls. Really? That's surprising. I was shocked too. And he always targeted younger girls, about 5 years younger than him. Emily laughed innocently, so I laughed along. Rumor has it he eventually caught a young girlfriend and got married. At that moment, I had a bad feeling. And I felt embarrassed about how I met Matthew here. He fell in love with me at first sight, and it was just a chance meeting. He is different from those frivolous men. That was what I thought, however, my hope was shattered. And he tells everyone he falls in love at first sight. Poor girls who get tricked into marrying him. Emily kept talking, but nothing reached me. From the moment I realized that man was Matthew, I couldn't think of anything else. I felt pathetic for being deceived by Matthew's words. Of course, I knew Emily meant no harm. She didn't know my husband was Matthew. Elizabeth, you look pale. Emily, noticing I had suddenly gone silent, voiced her concern. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about what to make for dinner tonight. Every day's a struggle, isn't it? I wonder what I should make. I said something out of desperation, but thankfully, it changed the subject. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about it and kept making mistakes at my part-time job from the next day on. Then, after dinner when the kids were asleep, I spoke to Matthew.
Today, a friend from work told me something a bit troubling.
Troubling? What kind of story? Matthew listened intently to my story. Surely, such a kind husband being the worst kind of frivolous man must be some mistake. I hoped it would be a laughable story. So I started talking, hoping for some reassurance. You know the station where we met, right? There seems to be someone there who falls in love at first sight with younger women.
And that person, it seems, got married to one of the women he picked up there.
I laughed after saying this, but Matthew didn't laugh at all. Instead of feeling reassured, I felt increasingly crushed by anxiety. My lips quivering, I managed to say,
"It's just a coincidence, right? You fell in love with me at first sight, didn't you?"
My voice trembled more than I thought it would. Matthew burst out laughing. And my relief was short-lived. There is no such thing as love at first sight. You were just the one who fell for it. He laughed in front of me, trembling.
All that person did was cause unnecessary trouble. You would have been happier not knowing. That's terrible. So, you tricked me into marrying you? Was your love for me a lie?
I couldn't help raising my voice at Matthew, who kept laughing absurdly. But Matthew, ignoring my feelings, added another hurtful comment.
It's your fault for being deceived. I wanted a naive young girl who would fall for it, which is why I chose you.
That statement was clear evidence that Matthew was fully aware he had deceived me. Well, someone like you would have ended up with a terrible man eventually. It's good you ended up with me. I'm going to bed now, I have work tomorrow. And with that, he actually lay down in bed. I admit I was foolish, but it was shocking to receive no support in my moment of realization. I thought I was loved, but realizing he didn't care who it was unbearably frustrating. When we went to greet my husband's parents for the wedding, they were relieved he was finally getting married and happy he married someone so young. I thought I was being praised, but Matthew must have been pressured to marry many times before. But now that I know this fact, there's nothing I can do about it. Although I no longer feel love, our marital relationship isn't bad, and with the children at a sensitive age, I can't bring myself to pursue a divorce. The sad and painful reality that I misunderstood love and got married was tough, but I told myself to endure it. Over time, I was able to come to terms with the past as just the past. Even if I no longer felt love for Matthew, there was affection for him as a family member. After learning the truth, our marriage wasn't as good, and Matthew began avoiding me on his days off, opting to gamble instead. Yet, I no longer thought about divorce, and after quitting my part-time job, I started working from home, leading a busy life. Our children grew up quickly, both graduating from college and finding jobs locally. Lisa later married a coworker and now has children. She lives far away, so we don't see each other often, but they're living happily as a family. The problem was James. After graduating from college, he found a job but resigned immediately.
That company wasn't for me. The boss dumped all his work on me. The part-timers are useless, just blabbering all day.
He complained so much that at first, I simply thought it was a bad fit with the company or the boss. That's tough. Surely, you'll find a company that suits you. I even supported his job change. Thanks to that, James did find another job but resigned again soon after. It was the same pattern over and over. I lost count of how many times he changed jobs before he turned 30.
I wanted to defend my child, but at this point, it seemed like he was just being selfish.
Full-time employment isn't for me. It's too much responsibility for a little pay. Part-time is enough for me. If a customer or the headquarters annoys me, I can just quit.
In the end, James, who had resigned himself to his situation, was still hopping from one part-time job to another. Of course, that wasn't enough to cover his living expenses. He lived at his parents' house, not contributing to food or utilities, using what he earned as pocket money. James, you're over 30. You can't keep living like this forever, can you? I tried to reason with James several times.
Even if you're not a full-time employee, you need to stick to one place to get a higher hourly rate, right?
Patience is important too. But no matter how much I worried, it was pointless. As for Matthew,
well, don't say that. He's our eldest son. We have to support him,
he said. It might be okay for now. But isn't he worried about his child's future?
Dad really understands, huh?
James, spoiled by Matthew, didn't seem to want to quit his part-time lifestyle. Then, at 34, James suddenly said he was moving out. Just when I wondered what the wind had brought, it seems he's planning to get married. And he's found a full-time job.
Actually, she's pregnant. So I've got to step up,
James told me. I was overjoyed. Of course, I was worried about James. I felt a sense of relief that my son was getting married and the joy of having a grandchild. James's partner turned out to be Mary, who is 7 years younger than him. Since Matthew and I also have a 7-year age difference. Blood is thicker than water, huh? James laughed. Mary was to come over to our house to greet us. Nice to meet you. Please take care of me. For a gift, she brought Matthew's favorite cake, presumably having asked James about it, and her attire was clean, leaving a good first impression.
Mary, looking forward to getting along.
I greeted her with a smile, and Mary smiled back. It wasn't a smile. I felt a sense of discomfort as if she was provoking me somehow and tilted my head. Oh, sorry. Just remembered a love at first sight story.
A love at first sight story?
Contrary to my confusion, Matthew and James started laughing vulgarly.
Haha. The story where Mom got fooled?
What, James? You already told her?
I was going to tell her myself.
It was about how Matthew and I met. I didn't even know James knew about it, let alone that he had told Mary. I was so embarrassed my face could catch fire, but at the same time, I felt a disdain for the three of them. Mary smiled triumphantly again and opened her mouth towards me. I'm definitely loved by James, so please don't worry. Is that something you say to your future mother-in-law, even if it's just the first meeting? No, maybe she said it to keep me in check, because I'm going to be the mother-in-law. Mary, you're an interesting girl. Beautiful too, must be popular, right?
Dad, with a wife like Elizabeth, you're in good hands, right? Then I'm relieved. I'll do my best to be a wonderful wife.
The three of them started chatting, leaving me astonished on the sidelines. I didn't miss how Mary snorted at me. She made it seem like she had James and Matthew on her side, putting herself above me. Mary was all about appearances, embodying the worst traits of a woman. James and Mary then started living together in an apartment not too far from our house. Despite her being such a person, if James is happy getting married, then that's all that matters to me. They soon had a baby. A healthy girl.
I need to work even harder from now on,
I thought just when an incident occurred. It happened one day when I returned from shopping for dinner. I heard a baby crying from inside the house. James's family must have come over, I thought, and hurried inside. As expected, James, his Mary, and my granddaughter had come.
Oh, you're here? You should have let me know.
Delighted, I put down my bags and rushed to my granddaughter. Then, Mary said to me in a chilly voice, who are you?
What?
I was stunned. I couldn't understand what was happening. James laughed vulgarly at her words. Amidst this, Matthew said seriously,
Starting today, I'm living with my eldest son, his wife, and our grandchildren. We don't need strangers anymore. That's what we decided in a family meeting. What?
Judging by the tone of Matthew's voice, it didn't seem like a joke.
I don't know who you are, old lady, but you need to leave the house. We'll work together as a family from now on, so please leave soon. There's no room for you,
Mary said, mocking me, while gesturing me away with her hand.
It's like we got married by mistake.
And with Matthew's words, the three of them started laughing vulgarly again, pushing my anger beyond its limit. There's no way I should be ridiculed this much. However, I calmed down and laughed off in front of them. Being on the same stage with such people and getting angry at their provocations is just foolish. After all, I'm the one paying $3,300 for living expenses, and to think they'd forget that and try to kick me out. What exactly do they plan to do from now on?
Got it. We'll get a divorce then. I'll leave just as you said.
To my words, the three of them put on a sickeningly sweet smile. I turned around and left the living room, locking myself in my room.
All your stuff is trash, so take it all with you,
Matthew yelled from the living room. Without responding, I quietly started packing my belongings. The next day, I called the movers. It was a slow weekday, so they could move my stuff in the evening. Please, as soon as possible. I replied immediately and decided to move out that day. I wanted to get out of that house as fast as possible. That was my only thought. Watching me hurry to leave, Matthew said with a laugh,
Where does an unemployed old lady think she's going? I would have forgiven you if you apologized.
I completely ignored his words. I didn't understand why I should apologize when there was no reason to.
I'll be out of the way of the movers, so I'm off to the casino.
Continually ignored by me, Matthew left the house after noon. I thought it would have been nice to hear a thank you for everything up until now, but expecting anything from him is foolish.
Right. Then, goodbye,
I said, watching Matthew leave the house. A few hours later, thanks to the movers, all my belongings were moved out. I contacted the real estate agent, got the keys, and completed the move. While there's still a bit of unpacking to do, I was relieved to have safely moved. All that's left is to fill out and submit the divorce papers, and I'll be officially free. Lying on the couch, feeling liberated, my mobile phone rang. It was Matthew. Hello? As I answered, Matthew shouted angrily from the other end.
What is this? What are you thinking?
His sudden shouting made me pull the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I said,
What? What are you so angry about? Don't play dumb. What kind of harassment is this? You took all the furniture and appliances. The house is empty.
I played dumb at his words. Then, I slowly looked around the room. This room is filled with furniture and appliances I brought from the house. But there's nothing strange about that.
What's wrong with that? You said not to leave any personal belongings behind, didn't you? What?
That's right. All the furniture and appliances used in that house were bought with my money, so they're my personal belongings.
You thought they were yours? I chose and bought them with my money.
I laughed heartily. On the other end, Matthew was speechless, making a choked sound. You said such things because James and Mary were there, thinking you could kick me out, but you didn't see reality. I'll give you the appliances,
Matthew said desperately, but I didn't miss those words.
Give them to me? I'm telling you they're mine. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Matthew fell silent again at my scolding. I could almost laugh out loud seeing his reaction.
Shut up! Anyway, this ends our relationship. Don't ever contact me again.
And with that, he hung up. Ironically, it was Matthew who had called me, but after being outwitted, he seemed to have forgotten he was the one who called. I couldn't stop laughing alone in my new home. I don't take his "don't contact me again" seriously, but I need to get him to fill out the divorce papers, so I will have to contact him. It's annoying, but I plan to go back to the house once I've gotten the documents. Walking with a heavy heart, I stopped when I heard someone calling me. Elizabeth. It is you, isn't it?
Emily.
It was Emily, with whom I had gotten along while working a part-time job. Though I had her contact and we met a few times after I quit, we hadn't seen each other at all in recent years. But a reunion after so many years is a joyous occasion. We decided to catch up a bit, so we went into a nearby cafe. After reminiscing about old times, Emily asked, "Did you have something to do today?" I told her everything in response to her question. It turns out, I was the one who had fallen for the frivolous man Emily warned me about and got married, and then was kicked out of the house by my husband and his son and wife. Contrary to my laughter, Emily felt down on my behalf. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." She looked remorseful, but I was actually grateful.
I was shocked when I found out, and I was too embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it before, but now I'm glad I know. I could have ended my life being ridiculed.
Of course, I wasn't lying about my feelings. There were times when I thought I would have been happier not knowing, but that's only if Matthew had been able to reflect on his past. Considering Matthew's personality, not knowing would have just made me more of a fool. Being able to take action while I still can is thanks to learning about Matthew's true nature back then. By the way, did you have something to do as well? After my question, Emily started talking after a moment's thought.
Actually, it's about my son.
Your son? Didn't you have a daughter?
After I quit the part-time job, I had another child. I came here today for a free legal consultation about him.
From her story, it seems there's some trouble with someone. While thinking every family has its issues, we talked about various things before parting ways. When I got back home, my son's family was there. It seems they were moving stuff in.
Hey! What's this about taking the furniture and appliances? Are you out of your mind?
They really intend to live together. The two of them glared at me. Where the large refrigerator used to be, there was now a small one, probably used in their apartment. I couldn't help but laugh at its cuteness.
What's so funny? Nothing.
Mary seemed to have understood why I laughed and snapped at me, agitated. I skillfully dodged her attack and spoke to James. "Where's Matthew?"
In the bedroom. Don't make a lot of noise, our daughter is sleeping.
According to James, Matthew was apparently babysitting his granddaughter. He did take care of the kids quite well when they were little. That was when I still felt happiness. Thinking back on those times, I headed to the bedroom.
I've brought the divorce papers. Leave them here after you write them.
As soon as I entered the bedroom, I said that. Matthew glanced at me, clicked his tongue, and quietly stood up. He was in the middle of cutting the nails of the granddaughter he had put to bed.
I was having my moment of peace, but the old lady had to ruin it.
Muttering complaints under his breath, he snatched the divorce papers from me. Ignoring Matthew, I looked at my granddaughter's face.
She may be the child of my pathetic son, but she's my blood-related granddaughter. My feelings of her being adorable are genuine. But, looking down at her with a smile, I was shocked by what I saw. A small, adorable face. It looked exactly like Emily, whom I had just met. Then, I remembered what Emily had told me earlier. The trouble with her son's girlfriend involved her lying about getting an abortion to scam money and then disappearing. I thought every family has its troubles after Emily's story. But now, I wondered if Mary was the one who scammed Emily's son. That's what I thought. If my suspicions were correct, then this child might not be James's. Thinking about this with a pale face, Matthew spoke to me.
Here, I've written it. Now leave.
Okay.
And take this with you. Well, you probably won't see this child again, so you might as well keep it.
Matthew handed me a tissue wrapped around the granddaughter's nails along with the divorce papers. I silently took them and quickly left the house. Then, I hurriedly contacted Emily again. A month later, my cell phone rang. It was Matthew again.
Hey! I got a notification about unpaid electricity and gas bills. What's the deal?
Again, he was irrationally angry, taking his frustration out on me. I don't know. Pay it yourself.
Where has the money been coming from until now? Where's the debit card?
Large footsteps could be heard. He must be turning the house upside down looking for the debit card. Seeing Matthew in a panic, I couldn't help but laugh.
What are you laughing at? Hurry up and come here. I can't make heads or tails of the house because you messed it up.
Matthew retorted and then hung up the phone. Though I wasn't keen on it, there was something I had to attend to. I reluctantly made a call to someone. That night, I rang the doorbell of the house.
You're late. What were you doing, you freeloader?
Matthew, who rushed out from the entrance, froze upon seeing the person next to me. Who's this?
A friend of mine.
It's been a while. Emily greeted him deliberately. However, Matthew just tilted his head. You don't remember the face of a girl you approached on the street, do you? Emily said with a laugh. I laughed along. Matthew looked uncomfortable and glared at me.
What kind of harassment is this? Bringing a girl I approached thinking it would bother me?
I wouldn't do something so childish. I came here because I have business with Mary. Let's go in. I entered the house with Emily. As expected, James and his wife were in the living room, seeming quite at ease in my absence. Both made faces as if bothered by my visit, but I didn't want to come any more than necessary. So, you're Mary. Emily started speaking upon seeing Mary.
Huh? Who? A friend of yours? Why are you bringing strangers to our house?
Mary snapped back at Emily. Emily looked incredulous but quickly responded.
I've been looking for you. It was hard to find you since you changed your last name after getting married. Hey, what do you want with Mary?
James stood up. Then, Emily handed an envelope to James. With a puzzled look, James took out the documents inside.
What's this? A genetic lab?
James read the name on the documents, which included Emily's son's name. The moment Mary heard that name, she turned pale, stood up, and snatched the documents and envelope from James.
What's that, Mary? You shouldn't be looking at someone else's mail.
Her voice was clearly shaken. Mary seemed to know about Emily and the contents of that letter.
We had a DNA test done between my son and Mary's daughter. What?
Your child is my son's child. Unfortunately, there's no blood relation to James. With Emily's words, James turned pale and froze. Mary remained motionless, also pale.
What do you mean?
Matthew, who had been silent, cut into our conversation. I said with a smile,
Your granddaughter's nails you gave me?
They were put to good use. That's right. I had handed the granddaughter's nails that Matthew had pushed onto me to Emily. And I told her that the granddaughter looked just like Emily. Mary was being rude and ungrateful. Scamming people for abortion money isn't beyond her. Emily secretly sent her son's hair and the granddaughter's nails I gave her to a testing facility. And it was proven there was a parent-child relationship between them. However, Emily hasn't told her son about this yet. Emily's son has been very worried about the baby that might have been born, and telling him now would make him restless. Before anything happened that could shock her son, Emily wanted to confirm the situation herself.
There must be some mistake. That child isn't mine?
Hearing the truth, James was in despair.
Poor thing, tricked into marriage. You misunderstood being loved.
Emily spoke to James. It was the same thing Mary had said to me. Being tricked into marriage by Matthew. It was ironic that James received the same comment.
My granddaughter wasn't even mine.
Matthew seemed shocked and crouched down.
The child will be taken care of by our family. There will probably be a court case.
Wait. Not that.
Given you're about to be divorced, and without a job, how will you raise her? And yes, return the abortion money. It's all gone.
Mary clung to Emily's arm, crying.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Emily spoke to Mary gently, as if consoling her. You pushed Elizabeth out and snuck into this family with lies. Do you think you can be forgiven? Despite her kind face, Emily's cold words left Mary unable to argue, only crying louder.
And what about the debit card? Ah.
I turned back to Matthew and said. Matthew looked dazed, his eyes empty. Before the grandchild was born.
My son's grandchild. My hope for living.
Matthew used to be excited. Now, that was gone. I understood the shock. But I pressed on with an even harsher reality.
The debit card is only with you. There's no other. No way. Then how have we been managing the living expenses until now? Isn't there a bank account for utilities and living expenses?
I was the one covering the living expenses. Every month, $3,300. Of course, I have no intention of doing so anymore. My words made James look up. Matthew's eyes darted around in confusion. Yes. $3,300. Every month, unbeknownst to Matthew, who then exclaimed in surprise.
What? You didn't know? Well, you were spending freely, after all.
Matthew looked up at the sky, perhaps reflecting on his actions. Thinking he hadn't been caught. He knew about the gambling debts, taking money out of the food budget when short. The money I set aside for bills disappearing wasn't a 1 or 2 time occurrence. Thought you hadn't been caught? Your wasteful spending was driving up our living expenses. Matthew retorted defiantly at my words.
Even so, there must have been some bank account with savings or bonuses. Such things you took out years ago and spent it all at the casino. Don't you remember?
Faced with the truth, Matthew looked shocked. He must have forgotten. And thought it still existed. I sighed in frustration. I had been quietly covering for his expenses with my money.
Do you realize now, after trying to kick me out, how much you depended on me? Live with that regret. Lies. How could a poor person like you have that kind of money?
Matthew yelled, refusing to accept the truth. Talking further seemed pointless.
If you can't believe it, then fine.
I shifted my gaze to James. That goes with you, too, James. Huh?
James, disheartened by Mary and his daughter's situation, looked at me with vacant eyes.
You've been hopping from part-time job to part-time job, not contributing to the household. You've been living off my money, and after kicking me out, have you thought about what will happen? Dad's savings are zero. You might still be able to work now, but how long do you think that will last considering your age?
James seemed to realize the gravity of the situation, trembling as if he'd seen something terrifying.
You might have thought living costs would decrease by having me back like when you were single, but you're mistaken if you think you can live the same life after driving me away.
No one responded after that. Only Emily gave me a satisfied pat on the shoulder.
I'm glad I could say what I wanted to. Shall we go then? Yes. Mary, I'll be in touch.
As Emily and I were about to leave, James called out to me.
Mom, where are you living now? Living alone must be hard, right? You can come back if you want.
A contrived smile. Calling Mom for the first time in decades. He was trying to appease me. I could see through his dirty intentions and replied with a slight smile.
Not at all. I'm living in a high-rise condo now. It's more comfortable than here. A high-rise condo. Yes. Bought it for $1 million. Don't worry, if anything happens to me, it's arranged to go to Lisa, so I won't be a burden to James.
James and Matthew exchanged glances at that amount. And Matthew stared at me, forgetting to blink.
A $1 million high-rise condo. Where the hell did you get that kind of money? Could it be you're actually rich? Huh?
Emily tilted her head in confusion at those words.
Your family doesn't know you're a popular novelist? I never told them because I thought they'd just make fun of me. Looks like the one that got away was a whale.
As Emily and I laughed together, Matthew and James stopped me with a change in their demeanor.
Look, Elizabeth, I was wrong. You've been doing such amazing work and I never realized, never gave you credit. I truly regret it. So, won't you come back?
Their sudden turnaround was nauseating. They pleaded with such ingratiating tones, as if begging me.
Mom, to be able to live in such a place, you must be incredible. Come back. If not, could you at least help with the living expenses? Please. I was just deceived by that woman. Isn't that pitiful?
James said this, pointing at the disheartened Mary. Mary shivered but seemed to have no fight left in her, sitting by her sleeping child without moving. I felt a bit sorry for her, but after all, she brought this upon herself and I had no intention of helping.
Poor thing, deceived into marriage.
I turned my gaze back to James and said,
So, therefore, you have to figure it out yourself, right? It's your own fault for being deceived.
With those words I've heard so many times before, I pushed Matthew and James away. They seemed to finally realize they were being abandoned by me, slumping onto the sofa in shock.
Well then,
I cheerfully bid farewell and left the house. My family, who had shown no interest in me. They never believed me when I said I was paying, always treated me like a poor person. They ridiculed me for working from home, never knowing I was a novelist. That I made money from royalties and invested in real estate. Being praised for my work by such people now meant nothing to me. In fact, I wanted nothing to do with them. Mary, who deceived me and drove me out, and James and Matthew, who lost their family and hope due to their continuous ridicule. They were probably a family of similar stripes, I thought with a laugh. After that, Mary and James divorced. Mary, having no place to go, was somehow allowed to stay in the house. Matthew and James, despite everything, couldn't abandon the small baby. Mary must be living there feeling very constrained. James ended up quitting his job again.
Seemingly thinking he no longer had a wife and child to support, he forgot he now had to take care of his father. How the two will live in that poor house. I hope they reflect on their actions and manage their lives. Later, Emily and her son filed a lawsuit against Mary and successfully won custody of the daughter. Emily's son, though an unmarried father, tearfully thanked me for winning the custody. Emily, too, is gearing up for parenting from scratch. I envy having something to strive for at this age. Meanwhile, I need to get to work too, turning on my computer, thinking about my next novel's plot. Perhaps a story about a woman who turns her life around after getting married and finds happiness. While looking at the night view from my beautiful condo, that's what I thought.
James and Jennifer are on our side too. Besides, they'll be gone soon. At those words, my hand stopped. Hey, are you really going to do it? Don't say do it. It sounds bad. It's an accident. An accident. My eldest son David and his wife Lisa were talking so seriously that they didn't notice I was there. Jessica, the wife of my second son, spoke to me. Jennifer, call the police right away. At those words, I hurriedly called the police. I am Jennifer. I turned 71 last month. I have dedicated myself to household chores without working outside, spending 50 years with my husband, James. Thankfully, we've had a joyful time. We were blessed with 2 sons. It seems ordinary, but I think it's a very happy thing. James is the second-generation president of a small wholesale company. He took over the company founded by my father-in-law 20 years ago. Blessed with customers, the business is going well. Now, our sons are working in my husband's company as executive directors. My eldest son David graduated from a famous domestic university. He's always been an excellent student, praised by his classmates' mothers. I was proud every time I attended a class observation. He studied hard even after going to college and graduated as valedictorian. Then he joined our company, where my father-in-law was president at the time. I was worried that he was too serious and didn't know how to interact with women, and his relationships with women were a complete failure. But 10 years ago, he brought home a beautiful woman 1 year younger than him. From what I had heard, she didn't seem to come from a wealthy family, but she always smiled at me and gave me gifts on birthdays. Living nearby, she often brought me food, saying, "Jennifer, I made too much." I found her to be a kind, thoughtful, and intelligent woman. They didn't have children, but I loved David and his wife very much. The problem was my second son. My second son, Daniel, was not as good at studying as David, but he seemed popular with girls, and during his college years, he was always with different girls. He barely graduated, and instead of joining my husband's company, he rebelled and joined a general company. There he met Jessica, a woman of the same age, and married her. Jessica, unlike Lisa, was unfriendly and kept our relationship to a minimum. She was very formal, giving gifts on Thanksgiving and Christmas and regularly coming home. But she seemed to want to keep her distance from us. She didn't want to live near our house and bought a condominium in the next town. Above all, I couldn't feel any warmth in her flat tone of speech. Daniel worked in a general company for about 10 years, then resigned and joined my husband's company. But he's free-spirited even in the company. My husband and David seem to have trouble dealing with him. But even such a son is dear to me as a parent. I expect David and Daniel to continue working hard for the company. One day, I went shopping alone. Spring is coming soon. I was looking for clothes to wear at the company's entrance ceremony. Although I don't work, I'm a director in name only. I rarely go to the company, but I occasionally work from home, preparing gifts for customers and socializing with other corporate presidents' wives. As part of that job, I attended the entrance ceremony every year. I headed to my favorite clothing store in the shopping mall. That's when I spotted a familiar figure. Lisa? It looked like her. No, but she was walking with a man. David is at work. It must be a case of mistaken identity. But I was still curious about the two. They went into a high-end brand store. I felt relieved. It was indeed a mistake. Lisa is supposed to be frugal. I've never seen her with any brand name items, and David and Daniel's salaries are no different from regular executives. They probably could afford luxury brands, but they would only buy them on special occasions. David wouldn't say it, but Daniel often complained to my husband. "The salary is too low. I can't buy anything. I should have changed jobs." Daniel has children, so he probably has even less room for extras than David. Anyway, Lisa, who specializes in housework without working, would never go to such a high-end brand store. I made an unpleasant mistake. I found myself laughing at the thought, and I left the place. Then, my husband's company had its entrance ceremony. This year, there was one experienced hire and 3 recent graduates. It's not a big company, but about this many employees join every year. This year, all were locals, and I hoped they would work for us for a long time as we successfully finished the entrance ceremony. The problem came after. Heading to the president's office, I found Daniel and my husband arguing. "It's strange, isn't it? Father must be doing something." Daniel was yelling at my husband, his face red. David was trying to calm Daniel down in a panic. "What's going on?" I asked in a hurry. "The books don't add up," Daniel yelled. "The books?" I had no idea what they were talking about. I asked for details. Daniel said that no matter what, the numbers seemed off. "You must be faking it," my husband yelled back. "Don't talk nonsense. This is why second-generation presidents who don't know the world... What do you mean? The argument between my husband and Daniel seemed to escalate. Enough already! At that moment, David's angry voice rang out. I'll look into the numbers. Both of you stop. Don't talk about something that might make other employees anxious in the company. David said to the two. The eldest son is reliable after all. I was impressed by David. My husband and Daniel fell silent at David's words. I felt reassured, leaving it to David. A few days later, David told my husband, there was nothing suspicious in the books, but there was one double payment. I contacted the other party right away, and they'll shift it to next month. Daniel probably thought that was strange. Thanks to him, we noticed. It's a good thing. My husband was impressed by David's words. The intelligence to explain Daniel's misunderstanding like this. Such an excellent son. I sometimes wonder if he's really mine. The business of April and the family quarrel had settled down, and I was dining with my husband, a long-awaited meal with my husband. We splurged a little on a course meal at the region's top high-end steakhouse, which had earned a Michelin star. The dazzling meal was a joy to the eyes. Soon we should think about paying David and Daniel enough so that they can take their families to places like this. I said to my husband while enjoying the meal. No, David maybe, but it's too soon for Daniel. My husband laughed at that. But Daniel has 3 children, and he's always saying his salary is low, isn't he? If he worked as hard as David, I might consider it. My husband laughed off my suggestion. Oh, come on, I replied, somewhat exasperated. We had all the courses and our stomachs were getting full. I'll bring the dessert now, said the waiter, taking our drink order and stepping back. My husband was content, sipping his coffee. Oh, a call. I'll be right back. The dessert will be here soon, so hurry back. My husband checked his mobile phone and stood up. Left alone in the room, I sipped my coffee. A quiet atmosphere. I couldn't help but hear voices from the next room. So you see, that voice was louder. At the same time, it seemed like a voice I had heard before. Calm down, we're just saying we'll watch the situation for now. It was my eldest son, David. The previous voice must have been Lisa. Were they here for an anniversary or something? I was delighted to realize that the two were coincidentally in the next room. When my husband returned, we would go say hello. They would be surprised to see us here. I quietly waited for my husband. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I could hear the familiar voices of the two quite well. What are you going to do by watching? I don't think Daniel would notice either. No, their voices were quite loud. Fortunately, this room was the second from the back. The voices of David and Lisa in the farthest room should only reach here. It's good that it's us, but it would have been a nuisance to others. I thought I should warn them. However, what followed was not a matter of warning. It'll be fine. James and Jennifer are on our side. Besides, they'll be gone soon anyway. At those words, My hand stopped.
Hey, are we really doing this?
Don't say doing. It sounds bad. It's an accident. An accident. The two were talking so seriously that they didn't realize I was here, or that their voices could be heard in the next room. First of all, the money. You can deceive more, right?
Last time I said it was a double payment, and they believed me. But what should I say if Daniel catches on this time?
I looked up, frozen. I didn't want to think about it. David had always been serious, but hearing this conversation, I turned pale. I was sure. The cause of the argument between Daniel and my husband after the entrance ceremony. It was these two. They were embezzling the company's money. I called my husband with trembling hands, but he didn't answer. Perhaps the call was taking too long. Someone I could rely on, I thought, and dialed my mobile phone again.
Hello?
That person answered immediately. Daniel, where are you? Come here right away. My second son, Daniel. He must have noticed my panic. He said he would come right away and hung up. Within 5 minutes, my husband arrived with Daniel and his wife, Jessica. He had met my husband outside, and he must have told him that I had called.
Jennifer, what's going on? Daniel said you called him.
I silenced my husband's words with a shh and a finger to my lips. The ice cream dessert that had arrived while my husband was on the phone was already starting to melt. I quietly pointed to the next room. The three exchanged glances. They quietly sat down and focused on the voices coming from the next room. While my husband was away, I had been listening to the terrifying conversation next door alone. And even as time passed, the two continued their conversation. Only when the waiter brought food did the conversation pause. And then it started again. I felt sick at being betrayed by David and the content of that betrayal. Lisa, Jessica whispered. The voices from next door were audible, and my husband Daniel and Jessica must have realized who was there.
So, daffodils, you know? There are accidents where people mistake them for vegetables and eat them.
Lisa's voice could be heard. The three probably didn't understand the content yet.
At least there will be a hospital stay for a while. If we're lucky, a funeral. So, make sure the embezzlement doesn't get discovered until then.
Daniel let out a small,
"What?" So if that is the case, we can wait and see, right?
David's voice was also heard. It was the same conversation over and over.
No, we can't stop the money.
At Lisa's voice, David said,
If they find out, they won't hand over the company to me. It's impossible. There's no way they'll find out. Or rather, before they do, right?
The conversation must have seemed serious. Jessica quickly activated the voice recorder on her mobile phone. My husband said nothing. Silent. Daniel was trembling with anger.
Before they find out, daffodils. So that's why they were planted in the garden. Yes, that's right. I've been bringing in my cooking, and they seem to like it. So even if it tastes a little off, they'll eat it, saying, "Oh, I messed up." I understood the two's plan and their hidden faces. What should we do? We need to feed them plenty. How much insurance money do you think they have?
Lisa's cheerful voice was followed by loud laughter.
Knowing father, he's got a lot on it. Finally, I'll be the president. It was worth obeying them all this time.
David's triumphant voice. Daniel stood up in anger. My husband said nothing to stop him. No! It was Jessica who stopped him. Why? I said to Jessica. She was heartless. She hadn't been deeply involved with us, so it must have seemed like someone else's business. But Jessica calmly said, "If we confront them here, it will play into their hands. Surely Jennifer and James will be swayed by David and Lisa." My husband and I fell silent.
So what should we do? They're trying to poison father and mother,
Daniel said. To that, Jessica replied, "It's okay. We have evidence. So, Jennifer, please call the police right away." Huh? I flinched at those words. Wasn't calling the police going too far? This is outright embezzlement, and they're trying to put those two in danger. It's a crime. If we leave it like this, Jennifer and James will be at the mercy of those two. But Jessica's words made me realize, that's right, if we continue like this. The thought sent shivers down my spine. I hurriedly called the police. Jessica explained the situation to the waiter, asking them to slow down the service to the two and make sure they didn't escape. And she also apologized for the inconvenience. If she hadn't been there, Daniel and my husband, with their heads hot with anger, would have stormed next door, and I, drained of all energy, would have forgiven the two without doing anything. After a while, we heard the sirens of police cars. Hearing that, Jessica went outside to guide the police. The three of us were told by Jessica to wait in the room, as we probably wouldn't be able to stay calm, so we decided to do so. We heard Jessica and the police's voices, and then they opened the door to the next room. What is this?" Lisa's voice was heard. "Jessica?" And the two seemed to have noticed Jessica. "David, Lisa, I've heard your conversation. I thought it necessary, so I called the police. Let's talk at the police station so we don't cause trouble for the restaurant." Jessica's calm voice had never sounded so reliable.
What are you talking about? We were just having a normal conversation.
Yeah, what will James and Jennifer say when they find out about this? The two probably thought Jessica did this on her own. They mentioned our names and resisted loudly. "You're trying to frame David by calling the police because Daniel can become president? Don't take it out on us." Lisa said that. Hearing those words from next door, my husband stood up.
"Father."
Daniel looked at my husband. The battle was still going on in the next room. "For now, let's move," Jessica's voice. Following that,
"Can we ask you to come voluntarily?"
the police officer asked the two. "Voluntarily? No, I'm not going. I haven't done anything wrong." Lisa said that.
"Yeah, that's right. There's no need to go."
David's voice was also heard. "Is that so? I thought you might have an excuse. Well, we're going to the police station now to submit a report. Shall we go?" Jessica said that. She must have spoken to the police officer. The two didn't seem to feel any remorse. We had to go to the police station ourselves, so we stood up. I stumbled a bit. Daniel supported me.
"Mother, are you okay?"
"Yes." Daniel had become quite reliable, though. He had been through a lot. We left the room. In the hallway were police officers, probably calling out to the next room. David and Lisa must have been in the back.
"Mother, are you there?"
David shouted as if he could hear us, probably having just realized we were there. His voice sounded frantic. "If you want to make excuses, I think you should come with us. Next, the police will come with an arrest warrant to pick you two up." Jessica calmly said that. The two seemed to have stood up at her words. I had completely forgotten about it in shock, but Jessica had taken care of the bill. And so, David and Lisa were taken to the police station in a police car. We followed them in our car. When we arrived at the police station, David and Lisa, who had arrived earlier, seemed to be appealing to the police, saying things like, "It's a misunderstanding," and
"It's Jessica's mistake."
We could hear them from outside the room. Another officer guided us to a separate room. There, I told everything I had heard earlier, about embezzling the company's money, and about preparing daffodils to feed us. As I spoke, I became frustrated and started to cry. The officer was considerate of me. My husband also embraced my shoulder.
"Regarding the company's loss, please investigate in detail tomorrow and submit a report summarizing the embezzlement and the amount of damage,"
the officer said. Daniel responded to the officer's words. "I can't forgive them for trying to endanger our parents more than anything else," Jessica stated clearly. I was happy that she was so angry for us. The officer said that since they hadn't actually acted, they couldn't be arrested for attempted crimes. However, it seems they could be arrested for a preparatory offense after listening to the conversation between the two that Jessica had recorded. They had actually prepared daffodils as poison and had been providing us with food to lower our guard. The photos I had taken of Lisa's cooking would also be evidence. I hadn't taken them with that intention, but I thought it was surprising how they came in handy. As I talked to the officer and listened to Jessica's voice, my sadness turned into bubbling anger. They must be arrested and made to reflect. But more than that, the feeling of being betrayed by my eldest son, whom I had raised with care, and his wife, whom I had adored, grew stronger. I thought they should see hell. I was scared of myself for thinking that. As a parent, I might be disqualified for thinking that way. But I also think it's inevitable to feel that way because I'm a parent. We decided, with Jessica and Daniel, that it would be best not to see David and Lisa. My husband, who was completely angry, didn't want to see them in the first place, and I might forgive them if I saw their faces. That's not true. I'm pretty angry too. But it was also true that I might forgive them if they apologized. We left the rest to Daniel and Jessica and went straight home. It seemed that Jessica's mother had come to play with the grandchildren, and she was taking care of them. So they told us not to worry and to rest. I was very grateful for that feeling. The next day, the police contacted us. In the end, the two didn't admit to anything. However, Daniel investigated the embezzlement facts and amount in one day. It was about 10 years, starting from the first year of their marriage. They had embezzled nearly $2 billion. sometimes a few $100s a month, sometimes a large amount. When I heard that, everything went dark before my eyes. I had been deceived for so long. Jessica, who had come to care for me, took care of the housework and communication with the police on my behalf since I couldn't move. It seems that Jessica's mother continues to take care of the children. I feel sorry for causing trouble to my grandchildren. Daniel consulted with the police and filed a complaint. Now, at least David will be arrested. I feel relieved, regretful, and indescribable. But thanks to Jessica, I didn't lose myself. And they were also arrested for the preparatory offense. The planted daffodils in Jessica's recorder became irrefutable evidence. The two of them stuck to their claim of knowing nothing. They seemed to have no intention of reflecting on their actions. For the embezzlement, Daniel filed a criminal complaint against David and Lisa. It seemed that the embezzled money was being given to a man named Toshin, a club waiter whom Lisa was supporting. Did David know about this? If he knew, he's a complete fool. During the trial, Toshin was called as a witness.
My husband was going to be the next president, so the money was good. I really didn't know it was embezzled money, and I have no feelings for her beyond being a customer. Just a customer.
At Toshin's words, Lisa became frantic.
Toshin, you said you wanted to marry me. I supported your sales.
Lisa screamed.
What are you talking about? You!
David also yelled. No, really spare me. It's just sales talk. It's impossible. Toshin coldly cut off Lisa. Serves her right. I almost burst into laughter. From this, it seems David didn't know. Apparently, he had been sending the money to his not-so-wealthy family. Caught by a foolish woman. It's a real shame. In the end, both were found guilty. As for Lisa, she was even rejected by her beloved Toshin in front of everyone. Jessica and Daniel laughed loudly when the trial was over. It really served them right. I probably saw Lisa with luxury brands before, and the man next to her was Toshin. I should have noticed at the time, but well, it turned out fine in the end. And the two were also indicted for the preparatory offense. With all the evidence in place, none of their excuses were accepted. Naturally, they were found guilty. Although they were given a suspended sentence for this matter, they received a prison sentence for embezzlement, so they will be in prison for a while. David cried and apologized to me, but I had no intention of forgiving him. He was fired from the company. All insurance money was transferred to Daniel. My husband clearly stated that he would make Daniel his successor. David, now unemployed, divorced Lisa. It's really good that he broke ties with such a woman. I don't want to be involved with David anymore, but the blood connection cannot be severed. The police also told us to support him so that he doesn't make the same mistake. But David is an adult, and that woman is gone. He will surely manage to live on his own without relying on his aging parents. Trust doesn't return so easily. I probably won't be able to trust David until I die. After that, Daniel firmly took over my husband's work as a successor. I was truly helped by Jessica. Without her, this matter would not have been resolved. I went to Jessica's house with a thank you gift.
Grandma!
My grandchildren ran towards me, looking happy. Jessica saying, "Sorry for the mess," guided me to the living room. There's some distance, so I hadn't visited Daniel's house in a while. Coming after a long time, it was so neatly arranged that I couldn't think of it as messy. And I was very pleased to see a framed photo of my 3 grandchildren, my husband, and me that we had taken some time. "Jessica, thank you so much for everything." I expressed my deep gratitude. "No, I've only done what's natural," Jessica said calmly as always. "Actually, I used to be uncomfortable with Jessica. You didn't try to get close to our house, did you? So," I muttered softly. "I knew you felt that way, but that's okay," Jessica said. "I think of you too as Daniel's parents, and I truly cherish you. If I let my emotions get involved, it might lead to unpleasant feelings, so I thought it was important to keep some distance, to cherish you both." I was deeply impressed by her words. Lisa was always trying to flatter me, and I was deceived by her and doted on her. But I was really foolish not to have noticed Jessica's feelings for us.
Grandma, look! A present!
My young grandchild Sarah said, handing me a clay craft.
Before Grandma came, Mom and I made it. When I said I wanted to make a present for Grandma, she taught me how.
The small clay piece was misshapen and couldn't be called skillful, but I found the clay very dear. "Oh, Sarah, thank you. Grandma is so happy. I'll treasure it." My words made my grandchild happy too. I'm glad Daniel married Jessica. My grandchildren and Daniel will be fine with her around. Jessica, thank you so much. I'm counting on you from now on. My grandchild, looking at me curiously as I spoke, smiled along with me.